Well, I flew in from Wisconsin this afternoon, and I want to talk a little bit about Wisconsin and what it means for the labor movement, and I think what it means for this country. But first, let me just say good evening to everyone who's here. You know, there are three places that I call home. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm a Buckeye. Grew up in Cleveland. Any Buckeyes here? All right, 1, 2, 3, okay. Grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I live in Washington, D.C., which I call my home now. That's where my two sons were born. But I also call New York City my home because I was here for 4 years running District Council 37, and I see a lot of my sisters and brothers here. And I want to thank Neil, and I appreciate this invitation, and I want to thank Neil and tell him that we appreciate his activism throughout the years. So give Neil a round of applause for the work that he does. Now, sisters and brothers, I was in Wisconsin, and I think I've got some insight I want to share with you. But I first want to read an email to you that I received when I was getting on the plane this morning from Madison, Wisconsin, coming here to New York City. It's an email I received from an AFSCME member who had been out on the streets, knocking on doors and making those phone calls and doing the important work, not only the union, but doing the important work of working families all across this country. And this is what he wrote to me. If you've ever been, or if you've ever even watched a barroom brawl on TV, oftentimes the hero takes a hard punch to the gut, coughs up a bit of blood, and falls to one knee, wheezing and gasping for air. The audience think he's done for. Everyone figures the fight is over. Make no mistake about it. We took one to the gut last night, and figuratively speaking, we're coughing up blood and spitting out pieces of our teeth. But I, for one, am getting back up. There's still breath left in my body, and as long as there is, I'm not throwing in the towel. I invite you to join me, to stay with the fight. Being on the right side matters. It's important. The fight continues, I promise. Peace be with you, brothers and sisters. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? But you know what? That's what this movement is all about. I mean, we're fighters. We're activists. And we can't let one battle deter us from what we must do. And what we must do in Wisconsin and across this country is to be advocates for working families, for the middle class, for what is right in this country, not what's wrong. And I'll tell you this, I mean, there's disappointment in Wisconsin. There was disappointment last night, there's disappointment today. But the battle and the fight is not over. And as long as all of us have a breath in our bodies, we will continue to make our voices heard. We're going to fight back, and in the end, sisters and brothers, we will win. We will win. So that's my message coming from Wisconsin. But it wasn't all bad. It wasn't all bad. I mean, you look at what we did for over a year and a half. We were able to take out 2 senators last November. We took out another. Now the Senate is in the control of folks who support working families. So Scott Walker won't be able to do the kinds of things that he's been doing in the past. So it was worth it. It was worth it. And just think about this. $60 million. $60 million being spent in that state to support and promote Scott Walker. A lot of that money coming in from outside that state. We didn't have $60 million. We can't match that. But what we do have is people power. We've got a grassroots effort that we must continue to grow and grow and grow. We've got to redevelop and rebuild our Main Street movement, and that's exactly what we're doing in Wisconsin, in New York, and across this country, because that's who we are. And that's what this fight is all about. Now I want to say a few words about one of my tightest buddies within AFSCME, a good friend, good sister, and her name is Lillian Roberts. Give Lillian a round of applause for the work she does. My sister, my dear friend, one of my closest advisors, and one of my closest confidants, someone to whom I look for inspiration and wisdom, as a lot of you in this room do. You know, Lillian's personal story is truly amazing, and I don't know if all of you know this. Some of you probably think that she's from New York. Well, she's not. She grew up in the tenements on the south side of Chicago in the 1950s. Despite many obstacles, managed to become the first black woman to be an operating room technician at a city hospital. That's what Lillian is all about. But for Lillian, her career choices weren't about achieving personal success. It's always been about using her determination, using her drive on behalf of working men and working women, not only in New York City, but New York State and across this country. She has been a union activist for over 50 years. Can you believe that? Over 50 years. And from Ed Koch to Mike Bloomberg, she's seen the worst in politicians, and she's dealt with those politicians head on. There is no making any mistake about where Lillian is coming from. She will tell you loud and clear what is in her mind, won't she? She will tell you that. So I'd like to thank Lillian for devoting her career to not only the workers of the city, but through her leadership as far as being an activist within AFSCME, she's supporting workers across this country. You know, it's a good thing we've got Lillian. If you look at what's going on in the city right now, if you look at what's going on in the state, if you look at what's going on across this country. You know, I was here at a rally. Guess it was last Thursday, wasn't it? Last week, in front of City Hall, where folks are trying to cut child care slots. They're working against people, working families, folks who are trying to play by the rules, the most vulnerable in our society, who are making sacrifices every day, trying to put food on the table, send their kids to school, pay their mortgages, and they're suffering, and they're scuffling. While we see that the wealthiest in this city and in this country, the top 1%, continue to gain more power and more wealth. Yet we cannot take care of our children in this city. And I want to thank Raglan George and 1707 and Neil and all of our community partners for bringing that to light in this city. And I suggest to you that we've got to keep the pressure on. You know, instead of joining with us to come up with solutions that work for everyone, politicians are using public service workers as scapegoats for problems we didn't even cause. Instead of being guided by basic American values, instead of being guided by those values, like our belief that hard work and playing by the rules should count for something, they're guided only by what their wealth dictates to them. You know, when Scott Walker in Wisconsin and Jan Brewer in Arizona and Paul Ryan on Capitol Hill, when all of them come after us, they have that same rhetoric. They use that same terminology. Blame the workers. Silence their voices. Steal from us that American dream. Now, these politicians always cry foul when we talk this way. They say we're inciting class warfare. You've heard it. You've heard it many times. But let me tell you, there is already a class war going on in this country. Make no mistake about it. And we've got to be engaged in this battle, engaged in this struggle, as our sisters and brothers have been engaged in Wisconsin for over a year and a half. We've got to be engaged here in New York City. We've got to be engaged in Puerto Rico. We've got to be engaged in California, in Iowa, in Nevada, in Arizona, in Ohio, all over this country. And what we are saying, what working families are saying, what that 99% is saying, is that we've had enough. Enough of the politicians who have been bought and paid for by the corporate class. Enough of the terrible budget choices and misplaced priorities that have devastated working families, devastated the middle class, destroyed pensions, and decimated public services. Enough of the extreme, overreaching laws that have silenced voices and stolen our rights. You know what? Here in New York, I've met many workers, many of our members from District Council 37, from CSEA, from 1707, and they're saying, enough. Enough is enough. And we're not giving up. In fact, we're digging in. Now, of course, that means continuing to fight for our rights, but it also means organizing and bringing new workers into our movement. When you've got strong unions, you've got a strong middle class, George. We can't do it alone. We've got to have partners in this fight. Whether it's public sector unions and private sector unions coming together like never before, whether it's our community allies and civil rights organizations, a faith-based community, students, retirees, progressive groups, coming together, redeveloping and rebuilding a Main Street movement in this country. I come from Wisconsin, and I am disappointed. But I got to tell you, my head is not bowed, because I know, and I believe that you know, that this struggle continues. It's too important. It's too important for all of us in this room. It's too important for everyone across this country who is trying to play by the rules every single day, trying to reach that American dream. That's what this is all about, sisters and brothers, the kind of country we want to live in. And I am convinced, and I will fight to my last breath, that we are not a country that rushes to the bottom, but we are a country that builds ladders and helps people move up that ladder into the middle class, to have a comfortable life, to have a living wage, to have a respectable pension. That's what we all must do. That's who we are, must be, to fight that struggle every single day. The battle in Wisconsin is not over, just as the battle across this country is not over. Join with us, and join with the 99%. We will fight back and we will be victorious. Thank you very much.